Hello friends, this is Pastor Coates. I want to welcome you back again today to another Money Talk lesson where we're in our series, The DNA of the Seed. We've been working on this for a while and we're talking about the fact that the harvest is always the same nature. It's the same DNA as the seed which produces it. You can't sow one type of seed and expect to receive another type of harvest. The seed is always what determines what the harvest would be. So I always encourage people to learn to sow intentionally. Take an inventory in your life and ask yourself, what is it that I want or what is it that I need? And then you know what type of seed that you need to sow. Now, someone might respond and say, well, if I already had it, I wouldn't need to sow it. Now, here's the point. You have everything. It may not be in the fullness, it may not be in the completeness that you need, but you already have in your life the seed that can be sown with an expectation of more and increase that God will bring into your life. I love this Money Talk truth. There will never be a day in your life in which you do not have seed. So today we're talking about another seed, and this is the seed of humility. Humility. Now here's the Money Talk truth. Humility is the seed for greatness or for more, for favor. Let me give you a couple scriptures. James chapter 4 verse 6. But he, that is God, gives grace. Therefore it says, God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. 1 Peter chapter 5 verse 5. Likewise, you who are younger, be subject to the elders. Clothe yourselves, all of you, with humility toward one another. For God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. If seed is humility, here's the harvest. The harvest is greatness. The harvest is goodness that comes from the favor of God. Proverbs 3:34. Toward the scorners he is scornful, but to the humble he gives favor. So James says in the New Testament, humble yourselves before the Lord and he will exalt you. So humility is the seed for favor or greatness. Now I got to give it to you really quickly, but here's 3 quick statements or points about humility. Number 1, the meaning, and then the model and the method of humility. First of all, the meaning of humility. You've probably heard me say this before, but this is very careful. Humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. Not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. Humility is not putting yourself down. It's not speaking negative confession of yourself. It's actually having a very positive, sufficient view of yourself, but also knowing it doesn't come from you, it comes from the God that's living inside of you. So that's the true meaning of humility. And then the model of humility, of course, is Jesus. He is our master model in everything. Philippians chapter 2 says, have this mind among yourselves, which was also in Christ Jesus, who though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself. Taking the very form of a servant, he became born in likeness of man, and became found in human form. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on the cross. Jesus is always our model. He modeled humility. Philippians chapter 2 goes on to say, therefore God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every other name. So now thirdly, here is the method for true humility. The pathway for true humility is always walking out in our lives in accordance with the instructions that we have in the mind of Christ. Now, if you're a believer, if you're born again, you already have the mind of Christ inside of you. Maybe we don't always listen to it. Maybe we don't always obey it, but it is there. 1 Corinthians 2:16, for who has understood the mind of the Lord so as to instruct him, but we have the mind of Christ. If I always listen to the Christ consciousness inside of me, if I always follow the instructions of the mind of Christ that's inside of my life, I can say yes to humility, not putting myself down, not thinking less of myself, but thinking of myself less, and that will release favor or greatness in my life, because God resists the proud but gives grace to the humble. So once again, here's the simple DNA today that we're learning. Humility is the seed for greatness.